Start streaming. And then go over here and then click play. You like the title?
Let the words proceed.
It seemed apropos for this week.
Yeah, it was either that or Harry Palms. So,
well, title. That's a whole different thing.
Let the words proceed.
All right, I heard all of you. Apropos. You both need to be a little louder. All right. Live stream is a running.
No one in the chat room
is currently empty. Jinda will probably be along shortly. Let's go ahead and get my notes up. And let me close these CPU sucking tabs here. Of course, I can't actually close them because the CPU is so busy, it can't recognize me clicking the close button.
So you click it too many times, and then it closes them all, and you're like, I hate you.
All windows, exactly. Yes. You've played this game before.
I have.
I was working last week with a Click Monkey. I was trying to show her how to do what she needed to do, and it'd be like, a screen pops up, there's 6 data points, and a next button. All right, what you need to do here next? Okay, let's click back. Okay, so you need to fill in this first field, type next. Okay, let's click back. Now re-enter that thing in the first, but I already typed it there. Yes, ma'am, and then you hit the next button. We need to not do that yet. Let's go into this next field. You're going to type in there, click next. Okay, let's go back. Just pretend that next button isn't there until I tell you it is, okay? And then it was, we entered some data. She clicked next because too early, a message popped up that said, address field incomplete. And then she closed that and immediately said, why won't it work? Well, that error message right there was telling you why. The one that you just closed without looking at it, it was telling you that there's no address entered. Well, I didn't see an address field. That's because you clicked next before the page had even rendered. Yeah, so let's click back.
Look, I know you're the professional and all, but let me explain to you how it's not working. And let me tell you how to fix it, even though the reason I called you is because I couldn't fix it.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Are doctors arguing with me? No, that's not how it works. Lady, I programmed this. I know how it works. Don't tell me that's not how it works. Let me tell you how it works. It's almost always a lady. Sexism alert. All right. Begin your local recording devices at this time.
All righty.
Okie dokie. I did that. Do I click next?
Yes. See, that's even worse. All right. Go ahead and click next when you're ready. And then we're waiting. Did you click next yet? Oh, you didn't tell me? Yes, I really did. Anyway. Let's see. Turn that down. How much do I love the podcast fans? Am I going to turn this fan off? I think I am. Whew, here we go.
Ooh.
When the beads of sweat start rolling, you'll know. I'm gonna have to be calling the show. That's it, guys. Good conversation. Bye.
We suffer for our art.
But all you did was give the name of the podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to GeekRant. Bye. Pay for what you like. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the GeekRant, episode 299. Stop that, or you'll go blind. Recorded August 20th, the day before the great event, 2017, and brought to you by Element OP Productions. ElementOP.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Drive Time Radio for Geeks. I am Mark, sometimes known as the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel. Joining me, I do this every week. Why can't I remember how this goes? These guys over here, that's Miles and that's Seth. Hey, bye, guys.
Hey, Mark, and welcome to the Faithfulites joining us. Glad you can make it.
Hello. The light's still on. It's not dark yet.
My brain is baking at this point, and I'm just going to apologize in advance for all my ineptness. It doesn't explain all the ineptness of every other show, but today we have reached the part of the summer where my air conditioning in my house simply cannot keep up with the heat kicking down upon us in this attic-turned studio room. So I am, let's see, it's now up to 82 degrees, guys, and climbing. That's not sweltering, but in an enclosed room with no air movement because I had to turn the fan off because I love you, the listener, and I didn't want you to hear that.
82?
Yes.
82's luxury.
Yeah, outside it's only like 95, which, again, for a Texas guy is not that hot. But in this particular room, it's like being locked in in a car out in a parking lot when it's 95. It's pretty hot.
Yeah, there it is.
So I
98. It's 98 here today.
Well,
Can you believe that?
you're not even over 100. That's a cool spell.
Yeah, I got to put my sweater on.
We all know those guys that when hits 50 degrees for the first time in the winter, has their parka on and they're freezing and going, "Oh, old man winter is blowing hard." And then like 3 months later in March, when it's up to 50 degrees for the first time, they're in their tank top and their shorts outside going, "What a beautiful day." What is it about us that makes us do stupid stuff like that? Humans are just dumb.
No argument there.
All right, before we get too far on, rest in peace, Mr. Jerry Lewis, today, just a few hours before the recording of this show, the great one, shuffled off this mortal coil at the age of 91. That was indeed a life well lived in so many ways. Made many people laugh, made two generations of people not know what the heck he was talking about, but that one generation really loved him. So,
and the French.
Yes.
Don't forget the French.
As a kid, my grandparents loved Jerry Lewis comedies, and so I have seen all of them many times. And I'll admit to never having been a particular fan of his style of obvious sort of slapstick comedy. I recognize that it appealed to a wide range of people for a very long period of time. And then later in his life, he became, the muscular dystrophy spokesman and really tried to make the most of the position he had gained. And I respect him for that. He tried to make a difference in the world.
I like the guy. When I was a kid, I used to watch him a lot. And then one day I discovered Monty Python. And then all of a sudden I couldn't go back.
Monty Python's awesome. I have the box set on DVD of the Flying Circus. My favorite DVD purchase ever.
Lightweight. I have it on VHS.
I couldn't afford it till it was out on DVD. So,
yeah. So a friend of mine just this week was like, "Hey, I got that new retro Atari 2600 with all the games. It's got 100+ games on it. You want to come over and play it?" And his wife laughed at me. He was like, "What? Why would you want to play those ancient games?" I said, "You don't understand. We're finally old enough to afford the game system we wanted when we were 12. It's not about actually enjoying the old 8-bit games. It's about sticking it to the younger versions of ourselves, saying, 'Ha, I finally have this and you didn't.'"
I could have bought this for you. It's like I could have bought you a PS4, but I bought me an Atari 2600.
That's
so there.
right. I miss the Atari. That was, you've never played Pac-Man until you've played it in 4 bits, where the sound effects went ank, ank, ank every time you ate a dot. That was the true Pac-Man.
I found myself yelling at the TV the other day. I was watching one of those episodes of American Pickers, and these guys must have gone into some place, I don't know, the back of nowhere, some guy's old garage or old shed or something, and he had a upright version of the original Pong, from the original Atari Pong. And they were like negotiating on the price, and I'm yelling at them, going, "Just buy it! Just buy it! That thing's priceless! Buy it!" Anyway, I think they did.
Yeah, let's try to get a bundle going. Maybe we can get that and this rusty old tire iron for $43. What do you think? I'm a big fan of bundling.
Oh, man.
Remember the one where he bought the rat nip stuff? Or fly nip or whatever. Every time he would "I'll do this. Okay, I'll give you $42 for that and one of those rat nips. Okay, I'll give you $27 for that and one of those rat nips." And by the end of the show, he had bought up all the rat nips. Didn't even know what they were, but he just thought it would be cool to buy.
All right. American decadence. When we pay money to watch guys go through other people's junk and haggle over it. You know the
Because-
end times are near.
Well, not everybody, but so many people have or know someone who's like, oh man, I wish they could come here and I could find out that all this crap I've been too lazy to throw away is actually my retirement savings. So,
You know,
it's every
when
person's dream.
it wasn't, what was it? Amazing Stories, sort of the spiritual successor to Twilight Zones. There was one of those episodes, and it was that redheaded guy that you look him and you go, oh yeah, that guy. We know him. Was in that episode, and he that was the whole storyline. A troll told him never throw anything away, and he was a bum. He got his mom threw him out of his house. He couldn't keep a landlord couldn't keep rent because he had so much crap, and he was a bum on the streets pushing a cart full of stuff because the troll told him never throw anything away. And this guy walked up to him and said, "Hey, that baseball card's worth $10 million. Can I have it, or can I buy it from you?" And that was the payoff of 40 years of suffering.
We don't respect trolls enough.
I don't know. That's sort of a backhanded gift, right? You're going to waste a quarter of your life so that you can enjoy the other 3 quarters. Is that worth it? Maybe.
If he had been working a regular 9-to-5 job during that time, would he have $10 million?
That's a good point.
So
That question
you know,
must go through the minds of every inmate in federal prison. I think.
Yes. All right. And another sign of the end times, other than Frank and Jim, Frank and John, what are the pickers' names? Anyway, is the fact that a solar event is happening tomorrow. Therefore, it must be the end times. The Mayans predicted this. They were just a little off. It wasn't 2012. It was 2017. Oh my God, we're all going to die. 3 planets are going to align with one another in such a way that bad things will happen, apparently. This continuing saga, you heard me rant last week about the way my school system is handling the eclipse. I just made the decision, right here on the show last week, I'm pulling my kids out, not happening. Well, in that time, there have been about 6 official statements from the school. Finally, the last one just today, like 7 p.m. Eastern time, we get a phone call from my kids' elementary school and said, tomorrow's an excused absence for everybody. Just keep your kids at home. That was the synopsis of the call. Eventually, apparently, what happened was the school bought a bunch of eclipse classes, and you have to send get a permission form, and if you have the permission form, there was an activity outside, and if you didn't, there was an alternative activity inside, which meant watching it on TV. Or if you're a religious faith that doesn't believe in eclipses, apparently you had some other alternative activity you could do. And somebody called into question the authenticity of the thousands of glasses that had been bought. And so, we can't verify. Nobody from NASA wearing a white coat told us these were good, so we're going to have to throw them all out. And so now you can't trust the glasses you bought. Not everybody bought glasses on their own, especially because since the school said we've bought glasses. So the only thing you could do at this point is just say, y'all stay home. And so that's been the official announcement from at least the elementary school. So it's just been ridiculous.
That school district is responsible for them selling for $1,000 on eBay because they bought up all the supply, and then they tell everybody they can't use them. Oh my gosh, is that not government in action? We're going to do this for you, and we did it for you. Come, let us do it again.
Yeah, but I part of me wants to rail against, and after last week's show, listening back to myself foaming at the mouth about the school, I actually feel a little bad about it because they're in such an impossible position right now. If any one of their 8-year-olds at any point in the history of their lives needs glasses from this point on, it's that school's fault, and it's this event that caused it. So there is such a liability at this point. The American litigious society is just begging for the opportunity to sue somebody. If little Jimmy comes in with a sunburn because they spent 4 hours outside observing the eclipse, Mama's going to sue and say, $10 million pain and suffering. So they're in an impossible situation, and in the end, I think they just did the right thing. Keep your kids at home.
I don't agree they could. I agree they couldn't win it, but my gosh, you especially can't win it when you give away all of your ammunition and weapons to fight with. They just you couldn't come up with a dumber way to handle it than the way it was explained to us through you.
Yeah.
So either they are very poor communication, in which case they maybe shouldn't be in the jobs of communicating, or they really are that stupid, in which case they shouldn't be in the jobs of communicating. So I don't know. Just
So
my
let me-
little, we're trying to keep it with the Geek Rant name. We're Geek Rant, not Geek Discussion, Mark. Come on.
Let me add to the stupidity level. My daughter sent me a tweet that she got on her Twitter, or I think she retweeted it. Apparently, somebody's going out there saying, keep all of your dogs inside tomorrow because you're not supposed to allow them outside in case they look up at the sun. Apparently, they can go blind as well. Is that a thing? I mean, to me, that just seems really weird. But I don't know. Should I bring the dogs in? What do you think?
Well, my dog's already about half blind. She's 13 years old. So for her, it wouldn't matter much. But yeah, I mean, if that were true, we would have historical evidence of roving ranges of blind raccoons every time there had been an eclipse in the past.
Yeah, like every single wild animal out there would be in the same boat, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I see a lot of blind deer and blind cows. And
I think that's just, it evidences the truth that animals are smarter than humans. They know better than to look at the sun, even if it's partially hidden.
Yeah. Oh, and somebody posted, of course, nobody can write out a status on Facebook anymore because that's so 2016 or whatever. So now they're putting these little, gifts up and saying that, hey, you want a great way to look at the eclipse? Put your phone in selfie mode and look at it over your shoulder. And I'm like, how stupid is that? The same process that will destroy your eye will also possibly destroy the camera on your phone. So why would you do that?
It may or may not do damage to the photoreceptor in the phone, but it will certainly not produce an image worth looking at. It'll be all blown out. Actually, the best way to do that would be to put your camera phone behind your eclipse glasses. And there you go.
Well, yeah, but it was for people who didn't have eclipse glasses.
So the thing is, when the sun is 80% eclipsed by the moon, the remaining 20% is still bright enough to burn your retinas. This is a fact. And so this is what it is. So it may be the visible light spectrum may have been dimmed enough that it's not uncomfortable enough to look at the sun. So you look up at the sun because it's not uncomfortable. But the UVA and UVB is still flooding your eye and burning your retinas because it's thousands of times higher than what you normally would do. Sunglasses don't cut it because sunglasses aren't designed for you to look directly at the sun. They're designed to block the sun as it comes in at angles and as it bounced around. So I understand all the warnings. It makes sense. I remember in 1984, the last time we had a mostly full solar eclipse. I think in Texas it was about 87% or something like that where I was. I remember the same sort of admonishments, and we all poked holes in cardboard boxes and did it that way. Because you couldn't buy eclipse glasses on Amazon. So the thing is, it's all good sense. The science is real. The precautionary nature is real. But 24-hour social media has made it an apocalyptic event when it really is not. I mean, it's just not. Yes, you could damage your eyes if you spent the entire 4 hours of time staring at the sun. But glancing up at it for a couple of seconds probably isn't going to do any damage. And probably anything over than about, like what we're going to get here, about a 98% eclipse, anything more than that is going to be too uncomfortable to look at. So really common sense wins the day, but social media is no place for common sense. And apparently neither is public schools.
Uncommon sense, Mark. If it were common, more people would have it.
Yeah.
How long are we expecting the eclipse to go for?
So it depends on where you are. But in my place, the point at which the moon touches the sun for the first time will be about 1:05 p.m. Now, at that point, it will only be visible with some sort of filter because there won't be enough of the sun blocked for you to be able to look at it. And then the time at which the sun moves entirely away from the moon will be at about 5:15. So about 4 hours and 10 minutes for the entire event where I am. It'll differ a few minutes at a time wherever you are in North America. So about 4 hours, but the meat of it, where the sun is half covered or more, will take up about a 2-hour thing, and the totality in the places where there is totality will typically last about 2 minutes. So for me, it's going to be an afternoon event. I'm taking that afternoon off of work. I've already told my boss it's happening. My kids are out of school. We're going to go like have a tailgate with some friends of ours, and we're going to have a science lesson about what's happening. All right, everybody, look up right now with your glasses on. This is what's happening. And then we're going to go like swim in the pool for a few minutes because it's going to be too boring to stand and watch the sun for 4 hours. And then at a 15 or 20 minute intervals, we'll come out and we'll look at the sun again and say, all right, look at the progress across the sky. Look and see what you can see. So that's the way we're going to handle it.
Trying to teach people stuff.
And if you're in the point of totality, there's some really cool stuff you get to see. Like it only lasts like 10 seconds or so. I forget what they call it. It's somebody's name's rings, and it's where the peaks and valleys of the moon are actually visible with the sun shining behind them. So it's just like that's 5 seconds or so between totality when there's just a little bit of light shining through, and you just see a little bubble of light shining through between a valley and a mountain on the moon. And so I've seen pictures of all these things because eclipses happen every couple of years. They're not as rare as you might think. It's just rare that they're in North America. I've seen lots of pictures of them, and I would love to be able to show my kids that. But for me, it's not worth getting in traffic and driving and taking the thing. 98% is pretty impressive as far as I'm concerned. I don't need to see totality. And the places where there is totality, I read a funny Facebook post today. It was in North Carolina, which is just like 3 hours north of me, is in the path of totality. In fact, there are some areas in extreme North Georgia that will have like 19 seconds of totality. And this lady was like, they're treating like hurricane season. They really are. Like all the hotels are booked up, and you need bottled water, and the traffic grid is going to be terrible. And I don't know if it's really going to be what it is or not, but they're just saying plan for the worst, because anytime you get a lot of people in high concentration in a rural area, stupidity abounds. So there's something to look forward to.
Yeah, no, I mean, stupidity just... The problem is stupidity always abounds. It's just nature can only absorb so much, per square mile. And so when you get more and more stupidity together, nature just simply can't absorb it all. And then so it's got to like eke out. And so hopefully the country will survive. I mean, there's a good chance that when we come out from behind the shadow of the moon, I mean, there might just be this crater swath down our country where, it was a total eclipse. So who knows? I mean, I'm very frightened about the possibilities of the United States of America surviving this event.
Yeah, the dead will walk. I guarantee it.
I'm just hoping that there are enterprising farmers out there that have thought ahead enough to put out concession stands in the middle of their fields and temporary roads and have checked the web, because you can plug in your GPS coordinates and you can find exactly where it is, and they should use this as an opportunity to sell their otherwise dormant land for an afternoon and have RV parking and all that sort of stuff. This would be a great opportunity for a large swath of relatively marginalized America to be highlighted for an afternoon. I doubt, however, that group of people is the type to also take advantage of this opportunity.
Well, no, see, Mark, you've missed it right there, because we as Americans, we are entitled to be able to go on anybody's property to view this. I mean, isn't that the case?
Yeah.
I mean, how dare somebody try to keep me out of their property so I can't get the best possible experience viewing this? I might have to like go onto somebody's property and climb up on their roof, and that's my right as an American.
Oh God.
Come on, y'all. I'm trying my best here. Y'all gotta help me.
There will be stories of people driving through fences and stuff. Yeah, I have no doubt that will be the case. They're going to be chasing the shadow line, trying to stay in totality for as long as possible, because it does move across the nation from left to right as you're looking at a typical map. So no, I'm sorry, from right to left. So I can imagine people trying to having a bet to stay in the shade as long as possible. And yeah, I could see them, screw your property rights. I have a right to stay in the shade as long as possible.
So if I could afford it, I wonder, would a jet fly too fast? Would a prop plane fly too slow? And you could have an eclipse flight, and you're just going to mirror the path and, stay in the eclipse for hour, until you run out of gas and have to find a landing strip. That would be, you talk about once in a lifetime, just won the lottery, waste some money. That would, that would be what you would want to do right there.
Well, see, that's really smart thinking, Seth. You've planned those flights, and you have cameras mounted all over the aircraft and monitors all over the inside. And yeah, you just stay in the path of the eclipse for as long as possible. What a brilliant idea. I wish I'd thought of it. Of course, I don't have a plane, but still, what a great idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know the math on that, but it wouldn't be hard to do that math and figure out how fast you have to go and when you'd have to leave.
Yeah. Like I say, that would be like if I won the lottery yesterday, that's what I would have been. That's what I would do with my winnings.
All right. Okay, moving on. The house is a push. Seth, I tried to lead you into this. I got nothing. What does this mean? The house is a push for the bargain viewer.
Okay, The House was the movie, the latest Will Ferrell movie where they operate the underground casino and they are the house. And, so the house wins on any bet.
Haven't even heard about it.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Well, it was in the they used to be called dollar theaters, but now AMC has made them like $1.84 theaters. So because, who has $1? Who pays with cash anymore? It's all on your credit card. So why not just make it some odd number? It's still less than $2, so technically it's still $1. But anyway, so I'm glad I saw it. To me, it's a good dollar movie theater. If I would have seen this when it was fresh out, I would have felt like it was wasted. But there was enough humor and enough funny things, and it predictable, enjoyable. But you're going to see a Will Ferrell movie, so you know what you're going to get. And I think they did an okay job. It was like I say, I'm glad I saw it at the dollar movie. I didn't feel cheated. I felt like I got my money's worth. So, they got to raise their box office numbers a little bit, and I got to enjoy a couple hours of time. Oh, and what made it really great is and I don't understand. I guess to African American people, all white people look the same, because I was actually carded to get into a rated R movie. I don't know how, but I was. I was like, do I really look that young?
Yeah, that salt and pepper hair is a dead giveaway. Oh, nice. My only media is I watched the first 2 episodes of Defenders last night. It came out Friday night. Netflix's new combination of Iron Fist and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Daredevil. And so far it's 2 episodes of meh. I don't care. I'm so disappointed that I don't care. And maybe it's a long storytelling arc. Maybe that's the way they're going, and it's going to get way better. But I really wanted to the very first fight scene of the movie was Danny Rand, and my main complaint about all of the fight scenes in Iron Fist was that they sucked. And so they started with the weakest choreography of the entire series, and that's just not, like the first 90 seconds was equal to the weakness that was the Iron Fist series. That's just not the way to start. If you want to start somewhere, start with Daredevil, or start with, even Luke Cage was more entertaining because he broke through walls and stuff. But the story they chose to tell didn't allow for that. So, anyway.
Well, bummer.
And Seth, you're not in the realm of the Netflix people right now, so you haven't seen any of it, right?
No, not yet.
All right. You need to buy a month and watch it.
Yeah, I might. Right now I'm watching Enterprise. So I've got like 2 shows left of the first season. I was just like, I haven't, and I missed a lot of them. So, I'm watching Enterprise and I'm enjoying it.
I tried really hard to like that. Hot Vulcan was really the thing to watch. That was it.
I call her T'Pol of 9. That's nice. That's my name for her. When I don't think of T'Pol, I think of T'Pol of 9 because, she's just trying to be Jerry Ryan and not quite Jerry Ryan. Yeah. So.
And then Miles spent his weekend apparently at the arts and crafts store because that's what geeks do.
Well, no, not me. Not me. This was a story I got from my wife when she got home. Okay, so this is weird, right? She's in this store and, I don't know, waiting at the counter for the framing section or something at one of the art and craft, like a Michael's. And her phone rings. And so she answers her phone, and apparently it's somebody asking for me. And I guess that's because maybe the phone was registered under my name on the account or something. It's one of those family plan things. And they start saying, "Why are you continuously calling me from this number?" That was what the caller asked. So she's sort of taken aback and she goes, "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not." And then the person starts saying, "Well, isn't this number?" And they say the number. And she goes, "Yeah." And apparently this person's saying, "Well, I've received 100 phone calls from this number. And, do you realize that your number is being used for all these calls?" And she's like, "No." And apparently then at this point, the caller starts asking a whole bunch of questions like, "Well, let's see if we together can solve this problem." And then starts asking all these questions. Strange thing is, meanwhile, this guy in the store comes up to her and taps her on her shoulder. And she turns around and it's a police officer. And he says, "Hang up the phone." And so she's like, "Oh no, what's going on? Am I in trouble or anything?" So she hangs up the phone. And the guy says, "That was a scam call. This is a real common thing right now. Apparently, what happens is there's this gang or crew or something that's out there, and what they'll do is they'll do anything to get your identity. So they get a list of phone numbers and names, and they just randomly call them and get somebody involved in this discussion of thinking that they've done something wrong, and then all of a sudden they get them to give up all this personal identifying information by making them feel like they're a party to solve the problem." And apparently it's a thing. And I've never heard of this, but this cop came up and literally saved the day. And it was just purely luck that he happened to be in the store. So I was curious, have you heard about anything like this?
I have not. I kind of thought that's the direction it was going to go when you started telling the story. It's clever. I want to give props to them. But, man, that's an awful lot of work, too. I mean, these people must have a lot of time on their hands.
Yeah. I'm wondering whether the problem is that people are using their cell phones and their SMS number as a secondary form of like a two-factor authentication. As a secondary part of the two-factor authentication. So if they've got your password and then they try and log in, it needs to send a code to your phone. There was a lot of people going on about this to say, be careful of your that somebody can't steal your phone number and have it applied to their phone, because then they can get you on the second part of two-factor authentication. I don't know. I just got curious that this came up. It was just one of the weird things.
Well, a lot of websites are pushing mobile authentication, like Yahoo, which, yes, I'm still using Yahoo as one of my email addresses. They're making it harder and harder to use a password instead of a phone number. And, a friend of mine, they locked themselves out of their phone or out of their email because their phone couldn't accept the code or something. And so I had to figure out how to go in and take our phone number off so that they could then use an email or a password. So a lot of people do. It's very, very common now for people to not use passwords because, passwords are so 20th century. You have a password, you should use your phone because everybody has your phone and everybody knows what awesome security all phone manufacturers use and, all operating systems manufacturers use. So everybody should use their phone for security. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I know PayPal use SMS for second factor authentication if you choose to. Probably most credit card companies would do it as well. So I don't know, it's a little bit unnerving, but thankfully we sort of caught it before it was an issue.
And like I said, they are actively pushing SMS and knowing that it is not secure at all. I don't understand that, but
this actually, it ties in with a great story. Can we go ahead and skip down to that story, Mark?
Sure.
Okay. I called it The Fix Is In, and this is an Ars Technica article. And of course, granted security, some fear mongering here, but if you get replacement parts for your phone through, oh, look, I found this place from China and it's super cheap. Chips are so small now that they can add a chip to a replacement part and hijack your phone security, because it can be a key logger, or it can, install malicious apps. And because it kind of bypasses the phone, your Android security or Apple security isn't going to detect it. It's, you think, oh, look, I got my screen replaced for only $20 or however much. Well, okay. The reason you got that screen is because it has this little chip built in. And remember, these aren't 10 years ago computer chips that were the size of a wristwatch. These are like, smaller than a micro SD card. Now that's in your phone, and it key logs your numbers, and then all of a sudden it sends it out every day during a period of inactivity. And so what you thought was a cheap fix has become a cheap way for groups of criminals to, harvest identities for sale. And again, do your due diligence. It's just because it can happen doesn't mean it will happen. But if everywhere this part is $100, but you found this one website that'll sell it to you for 20, maybe think twice. So
I love the name they gave for it, the chip in the middle attack. That's great. I would say that this is a proof of concept thing now. It's not something that is happening commonplace, but an interesting idea anyway.
Yeah, and proof of concept today is the packaged exploit tomorrow.
Right.
So, maybe whenever you bought that new iPhone for your kid to take off to college, and in 2 months when they, drank too much of the kegger and dropped their phone and broke their glass and didn't want to tell you, so they found this cheap way to get it fixed, and all of a sudden you notice that they're using an extra $400 a month on your credit card. Honey, what happened? Well, nothing. I promise I'm not doing it. Right.
And the thing is, you wouldn't necessarily, the end user wouldn't necessarily have to be the victim here. The guy down the street where it's pizza and cell phone repair is got his little shop set up in the center. He's cutting costs everywhere possible, and he may be selling these by the dozens, not knowing it. So it's a lot of work for the end user. It's definitely casting a large net to hope to get a couple of big fish. But the expense at this point is so low that there kind of wouldn't be any reason not to do it.
Right.
Interesting idea.
Man, you got to be on your toes, don't you? I mean, anywhere you go these days, there's always somebody trying to outthink you and habit. You got to be so questioning your habits all the time. But I don't know.
Of course, then what's the response to this? Throw your phone away.
Yeah, buy a new phone.
That's the response, which is not ideal, right? You don't want to be, we've decried that disposable mentality in the past, but that's the only way you can be 100% sure to be safe from this, because not many manufacturers have a repair option. They have warranty repairs, right? But if you crack your screen, your Samsung phone, you can't send it back to Samsung for repair. They're not in that business. So the only choice is to be 100% sure. The only way to be 100% sure that your parts are genuine is to throw the phone away and get another one.
Hmm.
Yay, America. But, and granted, that's not just America. It could be anywhere. Yeah. But just be careful. Treat your phone as if it is a precious thing and not a cheap throwaway. I have a crappy phone that I've had for 3 or 4 years, and I haven't broke the screen on it. So, and granted, accidents happen, but, if you invest in a screen protector, if you invest in a good case to put it in, then, you're doing that every time, but everybody's going to drop their phone. Especially if you have children, or you sit in a seat wrong, and and glass gets cracked. So protect, not secure, but also protect your device. Protect the things that matter to you, and if your pocketbook matters to you, protect the things that affect it.
And more, the phone is the repository of your most intimate information.
Right.
My password manager is on my phone. My credit card app is on my phone. The phone is now the place where I keep all of my secrets. And I don't think I'm unusual in that.
Nope.
No, you're not. And so, that's why not only is security important, but protection is also important. Protection is a form of security now.
Yeah.
How about that for tying those
That's
stories
good.
together?
So while I'm in the tinfoil hat mode, let me read some feedback from our friend Greg, who says, you emphatically state that everybody would benefit from having binary blobs in the kernel. While that might be true in a perfect world, it isn't true in ours. One argument for the hardcore open source people is that if they packaged a binary blob into the kernel, it would be easy to include a backdoor. So a special sequence of events could allow spying, data exfiltration, or something not desired by the owner of the machine. I believe my comments were well represented in the way I read that. So I'll let you comment on it.
Miles, you want to go first? You want me to? Because I can get all up in this.
2 words, reverse engineering. Seems to me that it wouldn't be, well, I've done a little bit of reverse engineering in my time where I've taken compiled code and tried to return it back to some semblance of source. It's not impossible given the amount of energy and effort with certain binary code blobs, but as a general principle, I guess open source is supposed to be open, and I guess that's why NVIDIA aren't giving their drivers and including it in Linux, because they'd have to open source them. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if I have a position on this. What do you think, Seth?
Okay. I think that while in theory, Mark, your argument sounds great and noble and, unicorns and rainbow farts for the masses. But the problem is you are trusting Intel or NVIDIA or Samsung or any company to hire great quality software engineers to write that. So there's no one verifying that they didn't shortcut the code to get it out because, it was given to them. Look, you got 5 minutes to write this driver before we ship it out or you're fired. I don't care if there's bugs in it. It just has to get out. That's the mentality of big companies like that. And so well-meaning, they didn't mean to put a backdoor in there. They didn't mean to shortcut security, but they cheaply wrote the code, and now it's available for attack to get you into the kernel because that blob is in there, and there's nobody who can look and say, oh my gosh, what did they copy and paste from the web? Was this a kindergartner writing code? So it sounds good until you get into the real world and realize how good big companies are at circumventing security. How many times, hey, let's open up all the permissions to test it, and then they forgot to close those permissions. How many times have we talked about exploits found in wireless routers, and it wasn't nefariously done there? It was just somebody did it for troubleshooting, and then they got fired for mouthing off to their boss, and the other person coming in didn't know that it hadn't been turned off, so it got shipped, and now everybody's home routers are open to the internet because of poor quality coding that nobody else can view. So that is why closed binary blobs in the Linux kernel are bad news for everyone.
Stipulated. But you're already trusting these people. The code, the driver, the hardware in the system. Hardware is just software on chips. The same Intel designers that you're afraid of also designed the chip that's in your laptop. The trust no one philosophy only works if you can do everything. If you can't do everything, you must trust somebody. So at some point, you have to trust the people who have the most to lose. If Intel is proven to have put a backdoor in a binary blob in Linux, that is a major downfall of Intel as a corporation. Will it cause them to crumble entirely? No, but it will certainly be a very damaging thing, whether it's knowing or unknowing. The same would be true for a Windows driver or a Mac driver. If they wrote code that was installed on a range of devices that was somehow a nefarious or accidental backdoor, that would be damaging to the corporate financial position of Intel. Therefore, or NVIDIA or whatever. So therefore, they have reason to not have a college student intern write the driver or to at least review it. You have to trust greed to protect you in this instance. Intel's own greed, NVIDIA's own greed, will make sure that they're producing at least safe code, if not quality code. You're already trusting these people. You open source zealots out there say, if I can't see it, I can't believe it. That's garbage. You're being intellectually dishonest unless you soldered the components into your own thing. You're already trusting everybody. Have you stripped down your car? Have you pulled every component out and verified it? Are you sure that your cell phone has not been tapped? Are you sure that there aren't any components there? Have you taken every piece of it apart? Have you made sure that your shoes don't have wireless tracking devices in them? Have you properly microwaved them? You have not. Therefore, you're being intellectually dishonest when you pick this one thing and say, yeah, but, binary blobs, but. It's just not a real argument. There are so many real arguments that we could actually be having to foist this unreal argument on the society just because you feel like you're some sort of super spiritual high horse there by protecting openness. It's just intellectually dishonest, and that's what pisses me off. Not that you don't have a point, but that you're choosing to pursue the wrong point at the wrong time.
I'll have to think about that.
No, I'm actually kind of leaning towards your position, Mark. I mean, you're right. We can't know everything in the world. We have to trust something. We can't know what goes on in our cars. We can't know what goes on in our home alarm systems, the surveillance camera you bought from some company. I mean, at some point, there's risk and exposure of being alive, and it's a question of how you manage it. And we don't have to have complete control over everything in our world to be able to feel that we can exist. It's just a question of what level of comfort we're all at.
The problem is that when these intellectual arguments take on a spiritual zealotry tone, we forget the real world. And Greg chastised me for not living in the real world here, and then threw an argument that simply is specious. It has the appearance of being valid, but it is not. Sorry, Greg. I appreciate you being a listener. I appreciate your feedback, but you're wrong, plain and simple.
I can understand his context, though, because if you're coming from a true open source position, then your position is that you got to that place, that open source place, because you had a bad experience in a closed source world in which you no longer trusted closed source. But I think you're right. The argument isn't black and white. It's not open or closed. It's maybe a little bit open with a bit of closed, or maybe a bit of closed with a little open. I mean, there's something in there for everybody. Just a question of finding what you're most comfortable with. Stallman goes nuts on this sort of stuff with his open BIOS laptops, and he won't connect to the internet, and he does all his email in Emacs or something. I mean, the guy's nuts. And he got to that place because he's made a career out of being that guy. But is it realistic? No, it's not. We can't live like that. That's just not the way the world works. So maybe a bit of what they're doing is right, and a bit of it, breaking from it. And we all work out what's comfortable for us.
I mean, I totally understand your argument. I look at all of the stuff that they put out and how many revisions and updates there are to their things, and not that there isn't updates to the open source and more people can see it. I understand your argument, and it's a valid argument, but then again, what's the point of open source if it's not open? Then it's like, I don't know.
Right, beautiful. Say that thing that you just said. What's the point of open source if it's not open? That's an argument we can have. That's an intellectually honest discussion that we can have. You can defend yourself on the point of, I'm willing to put up with the inconvenience of not having the closed source drivers because I believe the open experience is worth the inconvenience. I will have that discussion with you. I will agree with you on that. I will choose to go my own way. For me, convenience trumps openness almost every time. But, I recognize that at that point you have made a stand upon which we disagree, and that's great. But when you are unwilling to make that stand and instead say, but back doors, that's just wrong. Plain and simple, you have taken the argument out of the open and shoved it in. It's like invoking the Nazis. At that point, you have broken the argument by using something that actually doesn't belong there.
Yeah, I got news for you, Mark. My argument game, I think, is about to get better because I went to Half Price Books, and I went looking specifically for a book on logical fallacies. But of course, who's going to have that? But I did find a good book on argument that was apparently a college-level textbook. So it is sitting in my car now. I'm going to have to start going through it because I want to be able to argue better, and I mean argue in the sense is meant and not to be stupid, just disagree with people. But you lay out a proposition and you support it with facts, and you don't lay out point A but defend point B. You don't lay out point A but attack point C. So anyway, my goal is to get argument game. We'll see how well that happens.
And I think you did a great job of representing Greg in that. And I understand where Greg is coming from, but the point is, he basically just said Nazis in a discussion about gardening, and it's a trope that is so common all over the internet that it's become a joke. But it's just the way people argue these days, and you can't. You have to have discussion. You have to keep your discussion about one thing. All right, moving on. Miles, did you want to talk about *Halt and Catch Fire*, or should we just blow on past that?
Nah, pass it.
Okay.
It wasn't that great. At least the first episode.
It's been around for a while. Some people like it. I haven't seen it. That's all I got to say about that. So there is no particular topic tonight, and we're 40 plus minutes in without having said much.
What's the temperature at, Mark?
Still holding at 82 right now. So I told the guys, when you start to see the bead of sweat drop down my forehead across my nose, you'll know the show is over at that point. I'm sure I am turning beet red at this point, partly due to the emphatic nature of my discussion, but also partly because it's dang hot in here. So let's talk about the fact that Bing wants to be known as more than the little brother in the search market.
Well, it turns out that while Bing is not, it's not eclipsed Google, I think when you've captured 1/3 of the market, of the search market in the US, I think you've arrived. So that means at most it's half the size of Google search, but it's actually a little bit bigger because of all the little niche players out there. So yeah, Bing is, it's growing up, and it is, I guess it's got darn respectable. 33% of U.S. searches, Bing is bigger than you think. And then there's this little graphic that shows, like 23% in the United Kingdom. Some places are, Germany seems to hate them, only at 9%. But it appears that Bing, while not the darling of the ball, is no longer the laughing stock. So they got in. They just had to slip the doorman like $5, but they did get in.
Now, what they had to do was make Bing the default and very difficult to change search engine on their web browsers. They had to pay Firefox enough money that they dumped Google as their default. Then they managed to sneak into the 1/3 spot, whereas Google did it entirely organically just by being a good search engine.
Oh, Google bought share on Facebook too. That's part of what ascended them, was when they were default. So, Bing is just slower, but it's not crap. I don't use Bing, but sometimes I have done some comparative stuff, and it's not crap. I don't like it, but some of that is just the aesthetics, and I like what I use. If Alta Vista were still a thing, that's what I would be using. I didn't care what anybody else does, but it's not crap. So I think Bing is a viable search alternative.
Well, yeah, Bing. Nobody uses Bing. Quote, quote, nobody uses Bing in the same way that, quote, Google Plus is a ghost town. It's a ghost town with about 9 million daily active users. It all depends on what your comparison is. Yes, compared to Big Brother Google, Bing is an also-ran, but it is in the race.
Right.
But this is important to Google, though. If Bing was not there, Google would then be subject to a whole bunch of antitrust issues with the government. This way, they can defend themselves and go, well, people aren't forced to use us. They could always use Bing. So they don't want Bing to go away.
In the same way that Microsoft saved the life of Apple Corporation, Google wants Bing to succeed.
Yeah, and Microsoft killed browser innovation by giving away their crappy Internet Explorer. And it took years before Firefox came to the rescue of browsers everywhere. And now even the improvement in Microsoft's browsing technology can be laid at the feet of Firefox. So having a competitor out there to force Google to not get crappy if they want to stay good, it is good for everybody. It's good for Google users, but so yay, competition. Woohoo.
All right, moving on. IoT, the S stands for security. What happens when your smart lock turns dumb?
Yeah, there was an issue with this company. They issued an update to kind of like the BIOS of their locks, and it was meant for one model, but they accidentally released it to another model, so it bricked them, and you can't get over-the-air updates for it because of that. So the options are to send it in and get it replaced, which could take several weeks, or to get a new version. So anyway, it's just, you pay all the extra money for the features of a smart lock, and then they brick it so it just becomes a regular lock. Are you going to not have a lock on your door for 6 to 8 weeks while the company takes care of things? You're going to buy another lock and change it out for something that could happen again? What happens when they come out with the new version of lock that changes the buttons from circles to squares, and they want everybody to use that? So then they release another firmware that just on accident happens to brick all the old models. And, they'll give you a $5 trade-in if you send it back with postage paid to this address that doesn't exist. So, smart IoT stuff, it's great for a novelty. But if you're going to really invest it in your life, it is not, even though it's being used in prime time, I don't think it's ready for prime time.
Well, if you're just a regular homeowner with a smart lock and you have the key, this is a mild inconvenience. Your kid has to go play at the neighbors next door until you get home because the code doesn't work. If you own a beach condo and a significant portion of your annual income is renting that to people through VRBO or vacation rentals or Airbnb, and you can't give people access because you're 3 states away, this is a much bigger deal than just, oh my gosh, the code doesn't work for 6 weeks. The thing about IoT devices is they have to be connected. That's one of the things that we've always talked about is there has to be an update path. The Ring doorbell, for example, a security thing was found. They were to fix it within hours of the fix. And the sort of the tech community here on this show, we said that's doing it right. You have a connected device, you have an update path. But what do you do when the update breaks so much that you can't update anymore? I mean, anybody who's been in the tech world long enough has bricked the BIOS trying to do an update. It's just one of those things. And once you do that, you're done. It's over. And so they have updated their devices and bricked them. The only fix is physical. It must be taken to a shop, sent off or whatever. And so this could very potentially ruin people's lives in terms of income lost. Or, at the very least, it's inconvenience and maybe lock the kid out in the rain. This is an incredibly unfortunate series of events, but it's also an entirely unavoidable series of events. This will continue to happen.
Well, here's the other thing that, when you build a lock, the level of engineering that's applied to building a mechanical lock is design and then fabrication, assembly, and then basic testing, which means, yeah, it locked, yeah, it unlocked, ship it. It's not like that for software. Software is an entirely different animal for engineering it, and it requires an enormous amount of quality control, quality assurance, and it's an ongoing, forever existing, evolving thing. No one stopped at version 1; they continue going forward. And I don't think that a lot of these physical manufacturing companies understand what running a software company is like. They don't have any idea about it, and they're going through a transition of realizing, oh, yeah, we can't do it that way because it's complicated. And yet they're still under the same pressure to ship the new thing because their competitor's coming out with their version of the new thing. and we, the consumer public, are witnessing this transition. And if you want to put a smart lock or a camera on your door or your Nest thermostat, you better be aware that these companies are not necessarily very good at being software companies yet.
Yeah, and but even if they are a great software company, what happened is they have this one model, and it is the 6i, and then there's also this model called the 7i, and they released the BIOS update for like the 7i, but somebody accidentally clicked the box and said yes, ship it to the 6i. So even if the BIOS worked perfectly, they screwed the pooch for the distribution of it, and so now everything is left kind of hanging out in the open.
Yeah, and there's no easy fix for this. There isn't.
Nope.
This company is going to have to issue refunds to stay in business. They're going to have to say, "My bad, here's a free lock, and we'll overnight ship it to you." That's the only way they're going to survive this.
Yeah, you're right, because the only comparative company going through this would be like automobile manufacturers with recalls.
Right.
And a lot of, most of the small companies making locks, they'll be out of business. They couldn't afford to support that.
Yeah. And so I think LockState is the company. I think they're gone for smart locks. That doesn't mean they can't make locks. But this is a case of a lock company who turned software company, just like you said, Miles, and they were unprepared for the transition. In the case of like the Ring doorbell, it started as a software company who created a hardware thing. And I think you have better success with things like that, like the Nest. We start as software and we move into hardware. But when you get a hardware company that just wants to get in on this IoT thing, let's stick a microchip in this lock that we've been making since 1875, you end up unprepared and unable, and it's unsustainable. I think this company they're dead in terms of smart locks. The word will spread.
I don't know, because name one antivirus manufacturer who hasn't released an update that, deleted Windows system files.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but that didn't take a hardware replacement to fix. This requires a replacement of hardware.
Right. Yeah, it was, so it's bad, but the net society, culture, whatever, today's attention span, I think, is far too short for something like this to derail. It can set a company back, but I don't know that it has the potential to derail it, but I don't think it's automatic.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll also see what happens with the FCC. America has spoken up in response to what we talked about when the FCC said, Americans don't really need internet. There have been lots of responses, call for responses. Oliver, John Oliver, the host of Last Week Tonight, set up a website called Go FCC Yourself, where you can write some feedback to the FCC. There has been some feedback. I don't think anybody's listening, though.
Yeah, that's you can put the feedback on their website, but the problem is that's not the feedback that comes from the people giving money to the political machines. And yes, political machines exist today. They just look better than they did back in the days of Tammany Hall. So that's the side whose feedback really matters. I hope this does something, because, again, like I say, everything in the government is there to represent the business side of the economy. There seems to be very little to represent the consumer side of the economy. And the consumers are too easily, amused with cat videos and shiny new cell phones that don't really do anything different than their old cell phones, except appear shiny. For people to care what we think, but we're letting them know that we hate it. So hopefully it's enough.
And a site like Go FCC Yourself, while it's funny and it's certainly part of a television show, having people respond to a federal call for responses with things like "I came here for the lulz," it's not going to be beneficial. So I think this is a case of old world and new world colliding in a way that's just not beneficial.
And, you could even argue that the old world orchestrated that to make the new world seem inept and clueless.
I don't.
If you wanted to put a conspiracy theory hat on, that would be one you could wear and be pretty good in style today. Come on, guys, I'm
Yeah.
trying. Let's get some ranting going on. I'm laying it out there buffet style today.
I think I've held up my end of the bargain. I'm okay now. Facebook's keeping it local by spending $750 million right here in the good old US of A.
Yeah, I just, Facebook is growing, and this is a 22-acre data center that they are having to build because everybody wants to upload selfies. Yes, one picture doesn't require that much data, but when you have darn near 1 billion users averaging probably one a day because you say, I haven't done a selfie in 10 years. Well, teen girl down the street did 15 while I said that. So all of this data has to be stored because remember the thing with Facebook, at any time you can go and request, and about 30 minutes later or so you can download this blob that has your information, has all your pictures, all of your tweets, everything you've added for status updates. Everything shows up when you do that. So, in 60 years, when today's 13-year-olds who lied and said they were 18 when they joined are in their 70s and they want to show, granddaughter how it used to be back in the day, and it takes, 2 years to compile the terabytes of information that is stored there, all that stuff has to be stored somewhere, and energy has to be used to store it, and an infrastructure to support the people who monitor the data to make sure the hard drives don't go bad. Eventually the world is going to be one giant Facebook data center, and that's just kind of scary. Or when we get satellite done, maybe we'll just hollow out the moon and make the moon our data center. You
wouldn't have any cooling problems.
That's true, but we would be contributing to the heat death of the universe.
I was watching that. There's a new TV show out, well, relatively new. It's called Live PD. You guys ever seen it?
No.
Oh, it's on like Friday and Saturday night on A&E, and it's basically a 3-hour-long episode of Cops. So what they do is they have multiple states operating all at the same time, and they put inside the police car, they've got like a producer and a cameraman, and they follow around police officers on a Friday and a Saturday night. And of course, a whole lot of stuff goes down, and they edit it all from New York City, so they just shoot between the different things to make it interesting. Well, they had this one thing where a guy was, I think he was trying to hunt down the location of somebody who had a warrant or that they were trying to arrest. And they had mentioned that one of the greatest tools that the frontline police departments are using is Facebook. That they will find if they pull somebody up who doesn't have ID on them in a car, and they then ask the person for their name and their date of birth, so they can try and find out if this person is the person that they're looking at, because they want to get a photograph and match it. And if that doesn't come up with anything, they actually will check Facebook to see if this person exists and who their friends are and if they're actively posting. And I sort of watched this and I realized that's the police department's database now. They don't need the national crime databases. They use Facebook, and it validates who the person they just caught is, what they think, what they like, what's their political affiliation, what they want to brag about, their tattoos or whatever. It's all out there, and we're giving it out there to people. So I'm still not a Facebook user. I don't ever anticipate being one, and they can build data centers into the sky, and I don't really care, because that's the sort of stuff it gets used for.
I've long maintained that it's important to control your presence, to know what you want to do. And yes, these people are choosing to put things on Facebook that they might choose to put anywhere. But I've never liked giving my information to a Facebook or to a Twitter. I want to keep it myself. I want to build my own websites where I can control my data and I can have my message that goes out there and nobody can change it. Unless, of course, you use Squarespace and they decide they don't like you.
Yeah, this is, of course, the insanity has got to stop. Six Flags took down the Confederate flag because people get offended by it. It was the Six Flags over Texas. This is a little geography lesson for all of you non-Texans. sorry you don't live in our state. But, you know, if the French had a claim to parts of Texas, Spain had a claim to parts of Texas, Mexico had a claim to parts of Texas, and then, you know, we became the Republic of Texas, and then we joined the Confederate States of America. Well, we joined the United States of America, then the Confederate States of America, and then back to the United States of America. So having the Confederate flag flying has one of the six flags over Texas. You don't get any more freaking historical context than that. And that is only slightly dumber than things like Squarespace saying, hey, if you're a white supremacy group, we're going to take your site down because, you know, people get offended by it. Now, I'm not supporting their ideas. I disagree with their ideas, but I agree with their rights to have their ideas out there. If you don't see what they say, then how can you know the truth? You know, if I want to refute what they say, I need to know what they believe, or otherwise I'm just making stuff up. You know, we've said on the show many times, I'm a Christian. Talked to some Mormon missionaries, came by in college, and I was actually over at Mark's house when they came by. And, you know, it's like, I didn't like go ask my pastor what Mormons believe. I gave the Mormons my little missionary tract to say, here, this is all I know about you. And then what, you know, is this true? And let's go from there. So if you're going to take down the sites of everybody who disagrees with you, well, once they get removed, what's the next group that comes down? Because when totalitarian thought like this gets its foothold in society, it doesn't say, okay, good, that's all I ever wanted to do. We remove the neo-Nazis and the white fascists. The internet is perfect now. I'm never going to seek to silence anybody else I happen to disagree with. No, they say, hey, we took them down. Who's almost as offensive as them? Mm-hmm. Who's almost as offensive as them? Who's almost as offensive as them? And then it gets to the point to where you can't say anything online because it's illegal. Political correctness run amok is destroying the fabric of our society, because when somebody disagrees with you, you have to go to a safe space, you know, stocked with orange juice, milk, and cookies and Snickers bars. Otherwise, you're going to get offended and riot. And it's stupid that, now, again, this isn't, you know, we have a right to free speech. You know, they aren't cut off from the internet, at least not yet, just Squarespaces and other sites like that saying you can't host it on our space, you know, learn how to code and build your own. So I just think, I think this is bad for American society and society as a whole. And it starts us further down the road where you are not allowed to dissent when somebody mentions an opinion. And it's already showing up in colleges where teachers are teaching physical violence is an appropriate reaction to when somebody has a thought you disagree with. That's considered mental violence, and that's actually worse than you being physically violent to defend yourself against thoughts you disagree with. Now, granted, that's only an isolated incident, but hey, this is only Squarespace taking down hate speech. And again, I wouldn't disagree that, you know, white Nazis saying black people have to die and Jews have to die and Mexicans have to die and all that. I would not disagree that that's hate speech. I'm not condoning their speech, but I think their speech needs to be fought in the realm of ideas and not fought on trying to make sure that, you know, they have to be secret about what they believe. My arguments, my beliefs are not so weak that they require a vacuum of opposing opinions to stand in. And if your viewpoints are that weak, then, you know, maybe there's something wrong with your viewpoint. Anyway, Mark, that's my little rant on why I think Squarespace is bowing to the stupid pressure. Yeah. And, you know, we've lost more uncommon sense in America. What do you think?
Well, I think Squarespace built themselves on a platform of letting you tell your story. That's been their media from the beginning. That's the thing. We are a place where you can do your thing. You know, Facebook has fought this same battle. What are we going to allow? What are we not? To strike a contrast to that, this entity here, Element OP Productions, my website, is not your place. It's my place. It's not you, the listener. We hope to include you in the conversation, but I am the arbiter of all that is and will happen on this website. I reserve the right to strike any comments, to remove any posts. I have done so in the past. I will continue to do so. This is my domain, and I control it in the form of a benevolent dictator. Squarespace has chosen not to do that. Squarespace has said we are an open platform. As long as you spend $20 a month with us, you can say what you want. Until now, when we decide that what you want to say is not okay, Squarespace certainly has the right to do that. But my concern is that anytime you draw that line, you can either become 4chan, Reddit, the B board. You can become that uncontrolled sort of thing. Or you can have some controls, or you can have rigid controls. But it really is a switch. You either control what is on your site or you don't. And when you selectively control things, it kind of takes some of that righteous indignation out from under your feet. You can't stand on the fact that we say here, you can say whatever you say, you can be whatever you want to be, unless we disagree with it. Seth, your rant was well spoken. But I don't think it is actually appropriate in this context. This is not stamping out the right for these people to voice unpopular opinions. This is Squarespace making a choice. They can do that, but we just need to be careful about the choice that they're making. They have aligned themselves in a certain way now. The next thing that they might choose to do is take away certain political speech that they don't like. A Trump supporter website might be taken down because they disagree with it. All of these things are within their rights, but it does speak to your point, Seth, a growing intolerance within the society to be unwilling to hear those who disagree with you, whatever it may be. And while I don't think that is the bedrock foundation of unfettered speech is being shaken, because, as I've said many times, this whole thing here is not a free speech argument. It's not a First Amendment argument. The government isn't involved here. It does speak to the fact that our society is changing in such a way that we are unwilling to hear those who disagree with us anymore, and that I find disconcerting. Miles?
Yeah, and go ahead, Miles.
This is fashionable right now, which is sad. It's sad that we've come to a point right now where it's fashionable to be seen to be the one to not allow, far right or left elements to be stating their position. And I wonder whether or not there's an overreaction, because they think that if they get seen to be the guys who stomped out all that hate speech and got rid of all those sort of people, maybe their stock price goes up, or maybe their customers feel more comfortable, or they attract more customers. I don't think there's a motivation here which is anything more than this is fashionable and we think we can make more money by doing it. And that might sound a little callous, but this week has just been one week of fashionable opt-out without anybody really wanting to address or have a mature discussion or listen to somebody else's opinion. And I'm not saying that one side's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that nobody seems to want to listen to anybody anymore. I also get a general feeling that that we're going through a sort of a process right now where anything that makes us all start to attack or hate each other or fight each other over positions, which has been the case really for the last couple of years, it just devalues or it weakens us as a country in the United States. And I see that as potentially a setup by some outside authority that would benefit from us being weaker as a society. And I'm kind of a bit concerned about that. I'm not sure. Maybe just a sense that there'd be a lot of benefiting countries outside of the US to watch the United States burn down in a hail of argument, as opposed to actually being mature and listen to each other and start realizing that their position is not 100% the right position. You know what I mean?
That's seditious thought there, Miles. Seth, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, and for people who want to say, well, yeah, but they were violating Squarespace's acceptable use policy. And okay, maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but here's the deal. That policy was last changed in September of last year. The fact that they waited until somebody threw a hissy fit to throw up the, acceptable use policy, hypocrite. I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, we found out about this site. We looked at this site and it violates our usage. And so we're not going to allow it to go live. Hey, that's one. But hey, we've had this usage policy and we haven't enforced it for 2 years. But now we're going to selectively enforce it on you because, somebody paid us money to. Who knows? It's so hard to figure out what's actually happening in the country because, you go to Fox News, you get to hear the right wing spin. You go to MSNBC or CNN, you get to hear the left wing spin. The blogosphere, you're either neo-fascist or you're communist fascist, telling everybody else that they're wrong. So who knows what's really going on in our country? But I think this is a sad time.
Just general rule of thumb, rule for life. Just a good way to live your life is this: if you belong to a group with the word supremacist in the title, you're an idiot. That's just a good general sort of life lesson there. Having said that, shouting down those who disagree with you is supremacy, is fascism. Shouting down in the name of anti-fascism is still fascism. Mm-hmm. So you got to be careful that you don't become what you hate in fighting what you hate. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Well said.
Seth, what happened this week in history?
All right, Mark. So we're going to travel back in a time machine to August 18th, 1947. And we find that on this day in history, Hewlett-Packard is incorporated. Hewlett-Packard Company is incorporated 9 years after William Hewitt and David Packard sold their first oscillators from a garage in Palo Alto, California, where they had set up shop with a total $538 in capital. They determined the order of their names in the company by a coin toss. And moving on from oscillators, the first of which they sold to Disney for the movie Fantasia. How is that for history? The Stanford graduates built one of the world's largest electronic companies that survives to this day. So, Mark, that happened this week in history. And now back to you.
It all began. So many great things have begun in garages. And Hewlett-Packard, we would literally not be where we are today without those two gentlemen. Later, Packard Bell became another company as David Packard continued on to be the genius that he was. I think Apple bought that garage, if I remember correctly. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak bought that garage. History all over the place there. 1947, not that long ago. The world changed in dramatic ways. What are we going to see in the next 60 years? Next 70 years? What? I can't even imagine. What's in the garage right now that's going to change the world? Some sort of crystal storage device, some sort of quantum computing, as Miles mentioned earlier, a new power supply that will be clean and nearly infinite. These things are as much fantasy today as the iPhone was in 1947.
Yeah.
If I knew, I'd be buying into it, I'd be investing in it now.
Yeah, if I could find the hot tub time machine, I'd come back and tell you.
Lugal.
But, yeah. Motley Rue.
Yeah, man, I would love to go back in time and give Sergey and Larry, $1,000. So here, just give me 1% of your company. That'd be awesome.
Go back and introduce Steve Jobs and Woz. Say, hey guys, why don't y'all get together and do something? Here's some money to get started.
Yeah, well, see, people who were early in the Apple thing, Steve screwed them pretty regularly.
Well, that's true.
Woz was very generous. Jobs, not so much.
Yeah, but there were stories of when Apple was super hard up for money, like carpenters and stuff, they would pay with shares of the company.
Right.
So, if you held on to those shares, for 30 or 40 years, you'd be set now. Buy into the Amazon IPO, and I mean, you'd be set for life.
Indeed. Or you don't even have to go that far. Just Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, buy 1,000 Bitcoins for $1 each.
Oh, yeah. Now you're getting personal. Now you're getting personal. As I watch Bitcoin soar up past 4,000, and I think about those days when I literally said that thing. I think I'll buy 1,000 Bitcoin, and I just didn't. Why? Because it was too difficult back then.
You know, the first transaction in Bitcoin was somebody buying a pizza.
Right.
No, two pizzas, and they did it with 10,000 Bitcoin sent to them for two. Now what sort of Papa John's pizzas?
Yeah. Today,
oh my gosh, what an expensive pizza!
Exactly.
10,000. Oh my gosh, what is that?
4 million?
No, 40 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
$20 million per pizza.
It better be. It better be supreme and extra large.
That pizza good.
Yeah. But at the time, that's the thing about currencies, value for value. At the time, that's what they were worth. You can't always look ahead. Now, Seth, wait, before I do that, I will say this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can tell me I'm wrong. I told Greg he was wrong. Now you can tell me I'm wrong. Go to elementop.com, click the Contact Us button, answer the world's hardest CAPTCHA. For example, what article of clothing do you wear on your hands? Those are just some examples of the CAPTCHA questions. Real brain teasers there. Then fill out the form and let us know what you think. We've done a lot of pontificating in this show, and I bet there's somebody out there that thinks we're completely off base on at least one or two of those things. I'd like to hear what you have to say. To be honest with you, those of you that agree with us, it's always nice to be validated, but it's much more interesting to hear from those who disagree with us, particularly smart people who disagree with us. If you can disagree with us in an intelligent way, you'll get to the head of the line in the feedback queue. So let us know what you think. elementop.com. Use the contact button, or you can email geekrant at elementop.com, or you can call 559-IM-OPI, lest you fear that I am reading your words in a tone of derision. You can read your words yourself at 559-IM-OPI. Leave us a voicemail, and we'll play it there on the air. So now, Seth, what do you have to lower my productivity that's making you seem like a better hiring option?
Okay, Mark, well, you put me under the clock here because it's almost the 8 o'clock cutoff. So I'm going to talk fast and say go to humanbenchmark.com, and there you can test and see how well you stack up to the rest of the human race in such things as number memory, reaction time, verbal memory, and visual memory. You can sign in or just do it as a guest. Find out how well you stack up to the rest of the world. Humanbenchmark.com. Back to you, Mark.
So that's essentially what IQ is, right? It's measuring your tasks against a standardized group of people doing the same tasks. Interesting. And these are all about 3 of them are memory, and 1 of them is reflexes. So I don't think that they won't say a whole lot about you as a human being, but those are the things that it's easy to quantize on a software page. Cool. I could definitely
especially
spend
for
some
free.
time. Yeah, I could definitely spend some time wasting. If I click on the human benchmark, does it tell me what the average is? Now, see, I want to know what
when
the
you
average
go
is.
on each one. Like
Okay.
for number memory, the average is like 7 numbers at once.
Okay. Cool. Well, and that makes sense because I learned in my psychology that the average person can remember 5 plus or minus 2 chunks of data at a time. That's why when we take a phone number that's 9 digits, we almost always chunk them down. So it's 903-451-3789. So we chunk down those last 2 into 2 numbers instead of 4 numbers, because if we did all of them, we're at and by the way, that's not my number. Don't call that number. I just made that number up. Don't call that number. 8675309. We tend to chunk things down because 7 is about the maximum a person can do. So that passes the sniff test for me.
Yeah.
Poor Seth. He's afraid to say anything because the 8 o'clock cutoff is coming. Guys, as always, interesting show. The pendulum has begun to swing back the other day. Its direction is now 79 degrees in my attic. So the night has fallen. Winter is coming. I feel better. But anyway, thanks for hanging out. This was I like these kind of shows where we don't have anything to talk about, and yet we have great discussions. And I couldn't do this without guys to have great discussions with. You're smart, you're articulate, and doggone it, people like you. So throw some love
Especially
to these
me.
guys. Yeah. Throw some love to these guys. You know, the way you can do that is go to patreon.com and throw money. And when the money exceeds my expenses, I give it to them. That's how that works. So far, Miles, have I ever sent you any money?
Not as such.
Yeah. So during his tenure of the show, that equation has never come true. Seth used to make a pretty good bit of money back when we had sponsors. At least it was enough that he could buy a couple of toys. But yeah.
Yep.
Throw money at me, people. Throw money at them. And in fact, you could earmark it. Maybe. I don't even know. I'm making this up. You could email me and say, I just donated $1 a month or $1 a show, and I want that whole dollar to go to Seth. I'll honor that request. You can do that. So throw money at these guys because they're rarer than you think they are. So with that, I will say goodbye. That's it for this episode of the Geek Rant. Remember, pay for what you like.
Toodaloo.
Bye.
All right, let me end the stream. Bye, YouTube people.